Hello everyone, session 7 today, campaign reporting, key metrics to analyze and how to use data to improve campaign ROI. Super important chapter as every week. We are 70% through right now. Here's session 7 out of 10. Dive right in and go through the course, not the course, but the session content overview. So at first, why reporting is important. This should be quite obvious, right? As any marketeer, reporting is super important to make data-driven decisions. How to measure results, right? As previously mentioned already, influencer marketing is a bit more tricky to track compared to other advertising channels like paid social or SEM. That doesn't mean, however, that you can't track results, right? You definitely can, and you should use the tools which are at your disposal as much as possible in order to create the most detailed reports. And this is what this session is all about. We'll go through the most important influencer marketing KPIs to track, right? And we will dissect between top of the funnel, mid and bottom of the funnel KPIs. Then we take earned media value separately, and we will discuss that a bit more in detail, just because earned media value is such an important KPI, if not the most important one when it comes to running influencer campaigns. Then we'll go through an example or explain more in detail how to create detailed reports, right? We have templates for this, which we'll share with you, and we'll just walk through this together. And then the last part is how to use the data to improve your campaigns, right? Actually taking those insights and then implementing them to improve your ROI and the performance of your overall influencer marketing campaign. Now, why is reporting so important? Right? This again should be obvious, but let's just briefly touch base on this, right? To continue to improve your campaigns, that's the most important part, right? Without data, you don't know what is moving the needle and you cannot optimize for performance. Now, besides that, it just gives you a better understanding of how your influencer program works, right? And this is also important for the operational part of your business. And reason being, and this is actually something we will discuss a lot more in detail in session 8, so next week, budgeting and forecasting, right? So influencer marketing is a lot more operational compared to other advertising channels, because the gifting part will touch your supply chain. And if it touches supply chain, it touches inventory. If it touches inventory, it has an impact on cash flow, right? So forecast and budgeting is something really important. Again, if you compare it to paid ads, where sometimes or often Meta even gives you a 30-day credit, with influencer marketing, it's often the other way around. Your advertising spend or your cost of goods sold often in your gifting part of your campaign, right? So your advertising spend actually goes to your suppliers. This has advantages and disadvantages, but again, that will be explained more in detail in next week's session. But it is important, right? In order to create detailed budgeting reports, you need to be able to understand how your influencer program works, which is basically reporting and analytics, right? Another thing is, if you work in a corporate, you need to create reports for your management team or just whoever you're reporting to, right? You need to create reports in almost all cases, unless you're working in a startup. Maybe that's not required, but even there, it would be good to have certain reporting standards. If you have investors, right, they also request reports. And if influencer marketing is 30%, 40%, or even 20% of your total ad spend, it makes quite a significant chunk out of your P&L. So investors will probably want some sort of reporting on this as well. If you're a marketing agency, this is super important, right? For your clients, create detailed reports in order to share what you have achieved for your clients. And that's also why it is super important for marketing agencies to have a strict standard on influencer marketing reporting. Now, let's discuss a little bit more in a practical sense, right? How to actually measure results. Now, we will dissect briefly here already based on bottom of the funnel and top of funnel, right? So the easiest, let's say, KPIs to track in influencer marketing are actually bottom of the funnel. And what you use for this, and we have explained this, I think, earlier already, but just to conclude, because it's such an important part of this chapter, or of this session, affiliate links to track clicks and conversions, right? So affiliate links are important because you're also able to use cookies to attribute sales at a later stage. Because the second way to track sales are custom discount codes, right? So each influencer should have their own set their own discount code, right? This is super simple, right? Whenever a customer uses that specific discount code, you can attribute it to that influencer. However, with affiliate links, it places a cookie in the browser. And if the customer, for example, goes through the journey, they basically click on the influencer link, they do some Google research, and at some point they convert after a week time, the conversion can still be attributed to the influencer because the cookie is in their browser, right? Mids, they use the same browser. If they use a different browser or a different device with a different browser, tracking gets lost there as well. And this is actually super important. I think we explained this already. I'm not sure in which chapter, but tracking with affiliate links and discount codes gets lost, right? So with any type of digital marketing, attribution is rarely 100%. But I repeat this here. We have run many international expansion campaigns, brand new Shopify store, the only channel of influencer marketing. And we repeatedly see that the attribution rate using affiliate links and discount codes is around 65 to 70%, right? So again, 70%, 65% approximately of the clicks and conversions are attributed, around 30% are not, right? So you need to normalize for this by simply dividing your tracked conversions or clicks by 70% in order to get to the actual numbers. So this is super important. So now we covered the two most important ways to track bottom of the funnel KPIs, right? So clicks and conversions. For top of the funnel metrics, and the most important one is definitely impressions, right? It can be a little bit more tricky. And what happens actually is the larger the company is, the more emphasis is put on top of funnel KPIs versus bottom of the funnel KPIs, right? I will explain later why that is the case, but it doesn't matter if you're small or big. Well, I would say smaller company, bottom of the funnel is still more important, but either way, top of the funnel KPIs should be analyzed and tracked, right? It's super important. Now, why is this more tricky to track? For paid social, it's quite simple. Although there are also certain reasons why tracking gets lost, but it's basically whenever someone sees an ad, right? And Meta has this data. So you can actually see how many people have seen the ad. Now with influencer marketing, this is more tricky because you as the advertiser don't have that data, right? Now, the only way to get actual impressions is to ask the influencer for their analytics. And there are ways to actually use tools to automatically track this. So in Influencer Hero, for example, we can actually track actual creator impressions. But what's required for this, and this is super important, so whenever a platform tells you, hey, we can track actual impressions, double check this part because this is super important. The creator has to log in to their Instagram or TikTok or their social media to connect it to the tech platform in order for the tech platform to receive the actual impressions and top of funnel KPIs, right? This goes through the Meta API. And now this might sound great. You think, okay, now this is a solution to getting the top of funnel KPIs. This doesn't always work because a lot of creators, they don't like to log in to their Instagram through a third-party platform. And this is understandable. The creators, especially if they're bigger, they are concerned that something might happen, right? Whenever they log in using their login or username and password, something could trigger with those social media platforms, and it might happen that they lose access. Now, this doesn't happen often, but every now and then it could happen, right? And for those creators, it's their livelihood, right? So often they are very careful with doing something like this. So this also doesn't always work. So what happens actually, the way you get these KPIs and how still 80-90% of the marketing agencies operate in the industry is by simply asking, and this sounds very Stone Age, not advanced, right? But this is currently still how most of the industry operates. You ask for the screenshots of the creators, of the analytics. You have to manually transform that that data into a spreadsheet. And then based on that spreadsheet, you create reports, right? And we have templates for this, which are shared in the description. We're in this session as well. But yeah, that's how top of the funnel KPIs are typically requested from creators. Then let's go through some of the most important top, mid, and bottom of the funnel KPIs, which every influencer marketer should track. Now, I will go through this briefly, just because these KPIs should be familiar to everyone in this course, because some of them are influencer specific, but most of them are general advertising KPIs, which you should track, right? So let's go through it chronologically. We start bottom of the funnel and we work our way down to bottom of the funnel. So top of the funnel, brand awareness, right? Super important. Impressions, obviously. Total reach. Now, difference between reach and impressions, again, this should be obvious, but reach is the total number of people you reach. Impressions is the total number of times your advertisement or your earned video from a creator has been seen. Okay, so typically impressions is bigger or equal to reach. Then we have CPM, should be obvious, right? Cost per mil. It's basically the amount you pay to reach 1,000 people. Follower growth is another KPI to track, right? This basically shows how much your followers on social media are increasing over time. And this should be a positive trending line, right? If you're working with creators and your followers aren't increasing at all, something might be off, right? The more your followers are increasing, the more you can tie it back. I mean, it's not only your influencer marketing program probably, but there are certain strategies which I will briefly touch base on, which help significantly to increase your following on social media. And over a 6 month to 1 year period, you can gain 30, 40, 50K followings by following a certain, and I won't go through too much into detail because this is about reporting a KPI, but I will just briefly explain it, right? These are giveaway campaigns. They work extremely well to increase your audience size. And what happens is, you've probably seen that, super simple. You ask a creator to basically host a giveaway campaign, and you give away one of your products or a set product, and the creator basically creates a post and tells the audience, hey, I'm running this giveaway. In order to participate in this giveaway, like this post, follow the brand, right? That will be your brand. So that's basically the trigger, the CTA, to increase your following. And then often you use additional triggers like comment one of your best friends, and then build in this viral loop, right? Because more likes, more comments increases engagement, which makes the post go viral, or basically increasing the reach of that post. And that works extremely well. Now, what is important to keep in mind that this is more of a top of funnel approach, right? Just because most of the people, they want to access that free gift, they might not purchase directly. So although some of them will, there will be some conversions. Typically those types of campaigns, they don't run a lot of conversions, but they are focused on increasing your top of funnel metrics, right? Like your influencer followers. But those people are interested in your product, right? Because they're also the right audience, and they might convert later down the line. Right, so that's a great way to increase your following. Now, what we have seen is, if you have an active program where you work with 50 or 100 influencers each month, your social media team naturally gets in contact with the right people to run these types of campaigns. So by being active, you are in these communities, and typically you get also invited to these types of, let's say, giveaway campaigns. And just as an example, what works extremely well is if you run merged giveaway campaigns with other brands and creators together. And this happens over time. You will be invited to this automatically as you're active in the scene, right? And just as an example, you could run a giveaway campaign with 3 other brands which are complementary to your niche. So they have the same target audience, but you might not be direct competitors, right? So let's take an example. Let's say you're selling fashion, and you would partner with a jewelry brand and maybe something in that direction. Or let's take another example. You work in the kitchen niche and you partner with another product in the home decor sector and maybe food, right? Some certain like grocery brands. And then what you can do is you run these merged giveaway campaign. So all those brands together basically chip in product, and then basically the price of the giveaway becomes a lot larger, right? The winner gets 4 different products, and the retail value might be over $1,000. And then you have multiple creators and all those brands together trying to amplify the reach of that giveaway by sharing it with their audience through social media, through the newsletter, etc., etc. And those are things and strategies which can go extremely viral. And you all have the same audience, and you basically you share your audience, right? You swap your audience. So you give access to your audience, brand B gives access to their audience, the creator gives access to their audience, and that way you grow together. And that's something which works extremely well to increase your following. Now, we drifted slightly off from reporting, but I think that's just one way which works extremely well with influencer marketing and social media. Engagement rate, right? This is more mid-funnel KPIs. So engagement rate is the most important one, right? Typically it's likes plus comments divided by followers, but other metrics can also be included like shares, saves, brand mentions. Then we have click-through rate, also mid-funnel KPI to look at, right? If you see a very low CTR, maybe something with the video types are wrong. Maybe you can improve the CTA at the end of the video, whatever it is, right? So these are the most important top and mid funnel KPIs you should track. Then let's go to what most brands are putting their focus on, which is bottom of the funnel KPIs. Now, it is understandable. I would also say it is probably the most important one. However, it's very important that you don't obsess only on bottom of the funnel, right? And this is really where we see brands get stuck, let's say at 7 or even 6 figures or 6 or 7 figures, and they can't grow because they obsess on bottom of the funnel. And it is understandable, right? Especially if you are, let's say, a bootstrapped D2C brand and you don't have investors, you are very reliant on your cash flow, right? You need to reinvest your cash flow into growth. You might live off that company. So it's super important to quickly turn over and convert your customers, because without the cash flow, you can't keep your business running. But at the same time, if you don't nurture your top of the funnel, at some point you just dry out, right? Your audience is not big enough to convert them. So typically with 8-figure and 9-figure brands, what they do really well is they have a set structure for their top of funnel, mid and bottom of the funnel, and they tend to shift more of their focus to top of funnel compared to smaller brands, where I do understand, again, you need the cash flow, you need the turnover, but at the same time, make sure to keep in mind that you need top of funnel to nurture your audience down into becoming customers, right? So that being said, we have this small meme here. I think this is quite applicable. So the woman says, we want to increase brand awareness. What's the goal of this campaign? The man says, and the woman says, brand awareness, be honest, it's sales, thank you, right? So often this happens, right? People say it's brand awareness, but at the end of the day, right, you're running a business. So also top of funnel, you do it to drive them down to bottom of the funnel and convert them as customers, right? Quite obvious, frankly. So let's quickly go through the KPIs. Sales, most important. Then we have return on ad spend is typically what you hear throughout. Whenever we talk about advertising and performance marketing, we say return on ad spend. However, this term doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because you're not spending on ads, you're spending on influencers. So we would like to coin this new term, return on influencer spend, ROIS, which is essentially the same thing, but well, you're spending on influence, not on ads. So we will basically refer more and more to the term ROIS. Customer acquisition cost, right? This I think is just some general KPIs for performance marketing. I always like to look at CAC together with ROAS. And the reason being is that ROAS just gives you a part of the picture, and especially for recurring businesses. So for example, this could be cosmetics, supplements. So whenever you have a recurring component to your business or acquisition, meaning that customers will continue to purchase after your initial acquisition, you tend to put more emphasis on customer acquisition cost, right? Just because return on ad spend tells you, okay, I 2x my money or 3x my money, but with a recurring component, what you want is you want to really look at, okay, how much can I spend to acquire a customer, keeping in mind that a certain percentage of those customers, they come back to my business and they purchase every month, right? So again, supplements is a very good example, right? Whenever 30 capsules in a supplement and you have to take it every day, you have to purchase it every 30 days, right? That's why the next KPI comes into mind, which is CLTV. Super important, customer lifetime value. This is essentially knowing, okay, how much do customers on average spend over their lifetime, right? And based on that, I know, okay, how much do I want to spend on acquiring a new customer, right? So customer lifetime value is, let's say, on average, a supplement customer stays for 1 year. That's basically 12 times the initial purchase cost, right? So let's say it costs $30 for that specific supplement and your CLTV is 12 months, then basically your CLTV is $360, right? $30 multiplied by 12. So if you know that your CLTV is $360, how much are you willing to spend to acquire that customer, right? And this is also super important where we see the brands going 8 to 9 figures, they obsess on optimizing the back end versus the front end. See over and over again, right? Often brands get stuck in the 6 to 7 figure range because and it's also understandable, right? If you are a bootstrap founder, you don't have investors and you need to live off that business, right? You want to maintain a certain profitability, right? In order to pay dividends or just in general to keep a healthy balance. The problem is, however, that the competition, and these are typically 8, 9, 10 well, let's say 8 to 9 figure brands, they obsess on the back end, right? So a lot of e-commerce brands, they are break even or running break even at acquisition, or even slightly negative on acquisition, but they know that with retention marketing, they make money on the back end, right? And what happens then is that way you're able to outspend your competition, right? Your break-even ROAS is a lot lower than your, let's say, ROAS at 20% profit. So they're able to outspend and scale their ads. Well, you are not, right? Because you want to maintain that profitability. So despite that being tough and difficult, this is just something to keep in mind, right? Optimize your business for the back end, improve your COTV, in order to compete and scale your business. Next one is average order value. It should be obvious, right? You should optimize for AOV using upsell, post-checkout or pre-checkout, both upsell opportunities. There are a lot of different things which you can do to increase AOV, but that's also super important, right? That way you can spend more to acquire new customers. Typically, with enterprise brands, we don't see them obsessing about this. It's more about branding and positioning. But if you are in the, again, 6, 7, 8 figure range, or let's say the lower 8-figure range, AOV is still super important. Conversion rate, another thing, right? CRO. You have a lot of agencies, businesses which specialize on this, right? The bigger you get, the more leverage you get from optimizing your conversion rate in order to change the mechanisms of your business. So conversion rate is another KPI, which is super important to analyze for bottom of the funnel. Good.
Just a quick note, because you're following this content on YouTube, if you complete all the 10 sessions, you will receive this certificate of completion. You can access it through the link below. The course is widely acknowledged by corporates, D2C brands, and most of the larger agencies. You can add it to your curriculum vitae, your CV, as well as your LinkedIn certificates, and this will help to propel your career. Now let's get back to the content.
Then we will take a quick look at earned media value, just because this is such an important KPI for influencer marketing specifically. And the definition of EMV, it quantifies the monetary worth generated to third-party sources like influencer. Right? So this is not only used for influencer marketing, it's also used for PR or whenever you work with third-party mentions. And essentially what this KPI does, it tells you as an advertiser what the worth is of the reach and the impressions you get through your influencer program, right? So this is actually a top of funnel KPI, and it's a different way of looking at impressions. It provides you again with an estimation of, okay, how big is the impact I'm making with my influencer program? Okay, so this might still be a little bit vague, so let's take a quick look at the formula so it becomes more clear what this KPI actually tells you. So EMV is influencer campaign impressions divided by 1,000 multiplied by a set CPM. And the set CPM will basically tell you, okay, how much is the worth? So let's say you reach a certain amount of people and you divide by 1,000 multiplied by CPM. It tells you, okay, this is the monetary impact of the impressions you get, right? Now you might be asking, okay, what CPM should I use? Now, what we typically recommend is to look at your paid CPM and then put a slight premium on your paid CPM, right? Now, why is this the case? So let's take the example on your Facebook ads. You're having an average CPM of around $10. You would take a CPM of 15 or 20 for calculating your EMV. And the reason is because you can't compare paid ads to influencer marketing. The impact of a influencer impression is a lot bigger to a paid ad, right? They just swipe, right? If they see an ad, they just directly swipe. They have this mental trigger, I don't want to look at ads, and they swipe it right away. So your exposure is a lot more limited versus an influencer post, which is organic in the feed of your target audience. And people, well, the view through rate is a lot longer. And what happens is there's also a recommendation included of a creator, right? So an influencer recommendation post, an impression of that should be worth a lot more than just a paid ad, right? So that's why we put a premium of 50 to 100%, which I think is quite conservative. In my opinion, you could say it's 200%, like three times more worth, but this is a discussion point. So you can put whatever CPM you think is good here, but a good rule of thumb is 50% to 100% premium on your paid media CPM. And then you know approximately, okay, what's the impact, the monetary impact of my influencer campaign. If this is still vague, let's take a quick look at an example now. And there's also a detailed article in the description where we explain everything on CPM very much in depth. So make sure to access that article if you want to read more and learn more on EMV. But let's take this quick example, right? So first things first, you can calculate your EMV on your total influencer campaign, which is basically the EMV of all your influencers summed up together. But you can also look at EMV on an influencer basis, right? What's the EMV of one specific influencer? And this is what this example does. Right, so we have this influencer here. I have to check who this is, or I can actually quickly check this for you. So this is the article where we break down. So this is Charlie D'Amelio, very famous TikTok influencer with a very big audience. So maybe the younger people in this course would already know her. But let's take a look at this example, right? So there's like a lip balsam brand here, which she's mentioning. I'm not even sure if this was paid or if this was organic. But whatever it was, the impact is huge, right? So this video got 54.7 million views. And this is something which happens with influencer marketing, right? Why, again, is seeding so important, right? Just think about it. If hundreds to thousands of creators have your product, the chances that they mention you in some way and that video going viral is a lot bigger than if none of those creators have your products. Right? So every now and then, if you have an active seeding campaign, an active influencer program, you get these spikes because some of those videos just go massively viral. And this is just an example of it, right? So 54.7 million views, this is huge. And let's go through the steps to calculate the EMV. So first, determine impressions, right? We have that here. That's convenient with TikTok. They show the impressions publicly. With Instagram, with stories, is a little bit more difficult. Assign a set CPM. So for this example, we use $15. So a 50% premium on an average CPM of $10. And then calculate EMV. Straightforward formula. Impressions, so 54.7 million divided by 1,000 multiplied by $15 is 820K, right? So the monetary impact of this post on your business is 820K, right? So if you would be paying for this, you would be paying around 820K to get this type of exposure. Right now, the beautiful thing is it could be that this brand just sent this product to the influencer and this was an organic post. In that case, the cost of this post was just the cost of goods sold of the lip balsam, which is probably less than $5, less than $3 probably, maybe less than $1, and then the shipping cost, right? So the ROI on such a post is just huge, right? And if you think about it, on this you can spend easily 10, 20 grand to get exposure, right? Because your EMV is so high. So this is an example of how to calculate EMV. Then how to create reports. Now we will show an example. We have an example template which we'll share with you. Let me actually do that now. So in your file, again, this is where you all have access to. You can access all our materials. Go to chapter 9 or file 9, internal reporting and campaign brief templates. And then you have here the influencer marketing campaign reporting presentation. And this is super helpful if you're an agency or if you have to report internally to your management or to your investors. Use this template, read through the instructions, create a copy, and then you can just adjust for your own influencer program. So at first, we include a quick overview of your most important KPIs, right? Clicks, conversions, revenue, all the important KPIs here. Then your acquisition KPIs, CPE is cost per engagement, cost per view. What's just important is, don't only include KPIs and numbers. Also put emphasis on the creative and branding element of your influencer program, right? Just because there's so much more to it, right? So here we list the top posts and stories, videos. These could be reels. And this is important, right? Because you're not able to include all the videos here. But in reporting, your management or the client, they don't see all the posts of the creators, right? And it's important for you, for the person managing this influencer program, to show these respective stakeholders what you're doing and what the impact is. And the best way to do is to just show examples of some of the posts, right? Or the best ones. We have the creators here, then the KPIs of each of the creators dissected. Then content created by platforms, so the number of posts on each platform. And you can see here, this is also number of influencers, video views, engagement, estimated impressions, right? And then key takeaways. So you can access this, right? Create a copy and you can use this template. What's just important again is typically I like to dissect into top of funnel, mid and bottom of funnel KPIs and cost overview, right? So you can include the cost overview of your cost of goods sold plus shipping. Yeah, one thing to note here is if you, right, I forgot to mention that earlier. If you look at return on ad spend or return on influencer spend, we typically don't include the management cost into this KPI, right? And most advertisers like to look at return on influencer spend or return on ad spend just because it's such a, let's say, industry standard KPI to look at. But it also makes sense, right? Because if you're running paid ads, you don't take the management cost of the agency into the denominator of your ROAS calculation, right? You don't do that. So why should we do that with influencer marketing? We don't, right? So the cost of your influencer program are divided between the cost of goods sold of your seeding, shipping, influencer compensation, right? Which can be fixed or affiliate. And then your management cost is not included in your ROAS calculations. Now, the only difference here is with paid ads, the leverage of one person is a lot bigger. So one media buyer, right, they can spend millions in ad spend versus with influencer marketing where it's more operational. And typically the more you scale your influencer program, the more people you need to add to manage the program. So your HR costs typically continue to increase while you scale. Now, by using the right tools, for example, in Influencer Hero, one person can manage hundreds to thousands of creators, right? Still, because of the operational nature, you typically pull while you scale. So the percentage of your HR cost is a lot bigger compared to paid, right? So just something to keep in mind. Audience sentiment, that's also something which you should include in your reporting. Just a screenshot of some of the comments, right? So you show the positive sentiment of how customers are actually reacting to those posts. And what you can typically do is just include like 2 slides with like screenshots of all the comments, and that provides a good impression for your stakeholders of what you're doing and what the impact is of your influencer program, right? It's also important to know, especially as an agency, right, how do you position things in a positive way to your clients? But it's the same as an in-house marketing team, right? You want to show your manager or your management team, look, what we're doing matters, and it does. And it's important, however, to keep getting the budget to show the impact, right? So that's why reporting is so important. In Influencer Hero, you can access all the KPIs in one unified reporting dashboard, right? All your top of funnel, mid to bottom of funnel KPIs in one central hub. Your outreach statistics, clicks by country, top performing influencers in a table, and even it automatically tracks your cost of goods sold of gifting. So it integrates with your CMS like Shopify, WooCommerce, Magento, any of them. If you are not on any of those standard CMS, let's say, we offer custom integrations for enterprise businesses as well. And then what you can do is you can see in a chart, right, what your cost of goods sold cost is of your gifting campaign, which is an important part of your reporting, and then also access influencer payment reporting. So yeah, that makes it easy. What I really like is the export to Excel function. And I just, run, because if you have hundreds or thousands of creators, what you want to see is which creators are driving value. And just a simple Excel export, you can run pivot tables, customize your reporting, and that is super helpful. And then the last part of this session, right, how to use the data to improve. And that's also just to continue on what I just said, the Excel sheets, right? The 80-20 principle is so important. You need to see what's working, double down on your winners and cut your losers, right? So let me think how I best explain this. Let me take one step back and make one more comparison to paid social, right? You do the same thing, right? In paid social, you look at which creatives works, you double down on your winners, you cut your losers. With influencer marketing, the same thing. You need to experiment what's working, and then you double down on your winners, right? So these are different things. This can be the type of influence you work with. This can be the size of the influence. Sometimes, macro and mega influence work better. In some campaigns, we see very good performance with micro, and then we double down and scale micros. With certain niches, this can be that you experiment with different niches, right? So I think I mentioned this. We had one business, they were focusing on kitchen products, and we saw that other niches like home decor, family, knitting, like all those of different niches, they worked extremely well because they have the same audience, right? So you have to experiment, track, and then see what works and double down on your winners. Now, To get back to the Excel sheet I just explained, right? Why I like that so much is because gives me an overview of the creators which move the needle, right? And that, I think, is one of the most important takeaways of today, is again to tie this back to the 80-20 principle, to your top performing creators, because where the leverage is the biggest is to double down on your winning creators. And again, those are typically 5% or a bit less of all the creators you work with, right? And if you don't have the data in place, you don't know which influencers that are, and that can be detrimental, right? So knowing which creators are driving most of the impact and then assigning someone to manage those relationships is super, super important. Because again, all you want to do, test creators, identify your winners, double down on those. And that's what's super important, what we're trying to teach throughout this entire course. And that being said, that's it for today. I hope this was useful for you guys and hope to see you next week. Thanks for listening.